6:30. This open meeting of the Westborough Planning Board is being conducted in person in the Great Hall. As a preliminary matter, I'm John Gelsich, the Vice Chair of the Planning Board. Hazel Norse is not feeling well tonight, so she is not going to be here. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Westborough TV. I'm going to go over some preliminary items. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I know otherwise. I'm going to go through some ground rules. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to introduce the board. We have Christina Kelleher, John Pizzoni, Mark Silverberg, Jenny Gingras, the planner, and Dirk Bolito, the admin assistant. Sorry. So I'm going to introduce each speaker on the agenda, and after they conclude their remarks, I'm going to ask the board members for comments and questions. After all the board members have made their comments and questions, I will then reach out to the public for any comments or questions. A lot of these things have been discussed in previous meetings, so I'm going to ask that all the public comments are new, and if we start hearing repetitive comments, we're going to ask those to keep those to themselves and bring up new information. If you're interested in asking a question at this hearing, please introduce yourself by name and address, and the microphones are here at the table, or we have some over here. I don't see one in the middle, so we'll use those three for comments. And we are going to limit the public comments to 2 minutes. All right, so anything else, Jenny, or can we move on to the first?
I can move that microphone also to the middle too, if that helps. Go ahead and move on.
All right, so it's now 6:32, so we're going to move on to the first hearing. We're actually going to move 210 Turnpike Road before the zoning articles. So I would like to introduce that hearing, and if the applicant is here, come forward. So I will also say before the applicant starts, we did receive a letter from Wayne Webster. The board has received that. It's dated February 22nd. It has been added to the record for this application, and it is available online, I believe, Jenny?
Yes.
All right, it's available online. And then are there any other updates, Jenny, that we should be aware of before we hear from the applicant?
There were some updated traffic peer reviews done, and then updated comments from the town engineer, the deputy fire chief. So all of that was distributed to the board and is available on the application on Permit Pro.
Thank you. All right. All yours.
Good evening. For the record, Sam Alfronti, civil engineer with Solely Engineering, on behalf of the applicant. 6 Humphrey Street Realty Trust. John Nichols is here as manager of the trust. We've been before you guys, I think the last time was in December. Just to give you guys an update, and as well as anyone here, this application was submitted in October. We had a pre-application meeting prior to submission with the town. We were before the select board on November 12th. The planning board at our first meeting requested that this project be peer reviewed, both site stormwater as well as traffic, site circulation and parking. So that was performed by GPI. We received 3 comment letters for site stormwater and traffic and site circulation, and those have been ongoing since November. We received our final traffic letter on February 21st, which was Friday, I believe. That kind of closed out all the comments. Initially, the comments were quite lengthy. We had well over 120 comments combined, and we reduced those down to just a few conditions. And I think, and I hope the board agrees and staff agrees, but I think the plan that we're here before you tonight is a far improvement from when we initially submitted, thanks to GPI as well as staff comments and the town engineer comments as well. But since we were before you in December, there's been very minimal changes to the plan. So I've kind of tried to highlight the main changes, I guess you could say, that that resulted mostly due to the traffic peer review. But some of it was regarding some additional signage for traffic and site circulation, additional signage in relation to the pedestrian connectivity for Park Street, some additional pavement markings that kind of help traffic safety as well as site circulation, and some increased curb radii that help the turning movements for larger vehicles maneuvering the site. We did, in the initial submission, I think we had 80 parking spaces. The resultant of all the comments and changes, we are at a total of 76 parking spaces for the site, which is far exceeds the zoning requirement. Another highlight of the traffic peer review was in regards to the drive-through queue analysis. So initially we submitted a queue analysis that analyzed 5 Starbucks locations across Massachusetts. We increased that to 7 based on the recommendation from the peer reviewer. We actually observed the Starbucks in Westborough, 139 Turnpike as well, the one next to the Burger King and the Convenient MD, I believe. And that was included in our revised queue analysis. We still meet and exceed the queuing requirements for the town's site plan review regulations. They require 12, we have 15. And we satisfy both before and after the order board requirements, which is 8 and 4. We propose 8 and 7. I did a quick map here of the 7 locations. We've analyzed locations in Haverhill, Marshfield, Worcester, Canton, Easton, Westborough, and on Route 1 in Norwood. The total observations, we did 7 observations. It was just under 15 hours of observation time. Initially, these were chosen based on kind of orientation, site location, daily traffic. The 2 that we just most recently included were suggested because of the additional traffic. They were both on median highways, which is Route 9 as well as Route 1 in Norwood, which have similar ADT to what Route 9 in Westborough has, between 45,000 and 50,000 vehicles per day. The conclusions of the analysis and the observations are maintained. We saw an average queue length of 7.9 vehicles through all 14.33 hours, and we saw a maximum queue length of 11 vehicles. This just supports our design and the queue that is proposed for the site. As part of the traffic peer review, and I think the board suggested as well, initially we only analyzed the site drive in Park Street and the Turnpike Road eastbound and Park Street as part of the traffic analysis. We expanded our analysis to include the Milk Street and Park Street intersection, as well as the Turnpike Road eastbound and Milk Street on-ramp. The conclusions of the traffic analysis are maintained, and GPI agreed with those conclusions. I do want to run through, I ran through this at the beginning of my presentation on the first planning board meeting, but it's just the special permit findings of fact, just to reiterate and refresh the memory of the board members. But so this site is zoned highway business. The proposed use coffee shop with a drive-through, the restaurant with a drive-up triggers the special permit from the planning board. As you guys are all well aware, this area of Route 9 is a densely developed area with commercial businesses that include drive-through uses, transit-oriented uses, and convenient commercial uses. The project, we believe, is proposed in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. The acreage of the site is 3.89 acres. It's a underutilized commercial property in town, and this project brings a revitalization to the property, both economically and aesthetically for the neighborhood and the town. Utility capacity and connections, we are doing new utility connections for water, sewer, electric, and gas for the coffee shop. The building commissioner agrees that this proposed development complies with the current zoning regulations. That was from his comment, his initial review comment. I've provided an updated parking summary, which is 76 provided parking spaces. Based on the zoning bylaws, we're only required to have 42 parking spaces, so we far exceed that. I will note that a portion of the parking spaces are in the rear of the existing office retail building too. I wanted to, so the traffic impact study, as I previously mentioned, it was reviewed and agreed upon, and they, GPI stated that we adequately addressed all of their comments and suggestions. So that traffic impact study was reviewed by a third-party consultant per the planning board's request. Additionally, the town engineer has provided comments throughout the review process in addition to the third-party review. We have adequate on-site queuing for the proposed operations, as I mentioned, both in compliance with the site plan review rules and regulations, supported by our queue analysis that we submitted. We have 3 bike racks proposed, which is 6+ bike parking spaces. We believe we have adequate pavement markings, crosswalk signage to facilitate safe pedestrian and vehicular circulation. The project will not constitute a nuisance due to air, water, pollution, flooding, noise, dust, vibration, lighting, or visually offensive structures and accessories. We believe we're maintaining the architectural scale and style of the surrounding properties, and that pedestrian connectivity to the existing sidewalk network on Park Street will be a significant improvement for the neighborhood. I can certainly go through additional comments, questions, concerns if the board members have any. I'm very well prepared to talk about any of the comments that have come up in any of the peer reviews, but I'm under the impression that you guys have all had a chance to review or glance over some of the review letters, so I'd be happy to take any questions or comments, but yeah.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any comments or questions for the
I just had one. Can you go back to the slide where you did the analysis at the other 7? Did you have the time on there?
So I think you're probably referencing Mr. Webster's comment regarding the timing of the queuing. Is that what?
Yeah, I'm just curious where, like, what is this peak time?
Yes, so I actually took this off of, took it off there so I could fit the locations. But
Even if not exact, it's just like if it was like morning, yeah.
I can, so location 1 in Haverhill, as part of a different application we submitted in the Commonwealth, we've seen that the peak hour, although the peak hour is the AM morning hours between 7 and 9, Starbucks specifically kind of has an afternoon peak. It's when schools get out. It's kind of between 12 and 2. So in Haverhill, we analyzed between 12:50 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. Location 2 through 7, we did anywhere between 6:30 and 9:30 a.m. So we did 6 in the morning and 1 in our afternoon peak. I know that was a comment by GPI. They were kind of confused why we included that. But it's supported by the evidence in that observation that we did between 12:50 and 2:30. I think we saw a max queue of 10, which would have been second highest in all the queues we've seen. So,
Thank you. That was my only question.
Any other questions from the board? John?
Yeah, so I still feel like I'm short some information on how many trips. We had asked, or I had asked at one point, how many trips are going to be generated from Milk Street? There was a response at one point that you agreed that the intersection of Milk Street and Park Street would be added to the traffic study, and I may have missed it. There's a lot of data in front of us, but I'm still struggling to figure out how many additional trips will be generated from Milk Street to Park Street. I mean, from Milk Street onto Park Street to this site.
yeah, I can, so it's on,
At peak.
it's figure 6 and 7 of the traffic impact study.
Okay.
But I could go through them if you'd like.
I'm sorry, the original traffic study?
The revised, the original one did not include the intersection of Milk Street and Park Street, so that was part of the information you guys requested that we submitted.
So how many is that going to be?
So in the 2031 build traffic volumes, that's the years we analyzed. We analyzed the 2031 build and no build traffic volumes versus existing conditions. So coming off of Milk Street onto Park Street,
Right.
we have The AM, we're expecting total, this is so people turning right, heading northbound on Milk Street, as well as people turning left, heading southbound. We're anticipating 88 in the no build 2031 volumes. And then in the 2031 build, we have 110. So 110.
Per hour?
That's the maximum AM hour, yep. So in the 2031 no build, so this is if this project were not to be constructed,
Okay, and if
we're
it is
anticipating
constructed-
88. If we build this in 2031, we're anticipating 110.
Well, how many trips is it now? I want to know what the increase is.
Currently, we have 12.
So you're anticipating 60 to 70 additional trips from Milk Street?
So no, the no build is 88,
No build is 88.
correct. In the
How
build,
many, it's a very simple question. How many additional trips are we going to generate from Milk?
22.
22.
Yep. So one thing it's not as cut and dry as I think you'd like the answer to be, because when you analyze traffic, you use growth factors. So we use a 3% growth factor, which GPI agreed with, and actually it exceeds the Mass DOT proposed growth factors. And what that does is that calculates in and provides a buffer for other projects that are proposed that this traffic analysis doesn't. So if someone were to come in and build 100 apartments off Milk Street, those trips would impact Park Street indirectly. And what that 3% growth factor is that it takes into account other projects in the area and the network growth. So that might be some of your confusion between the 12 and 88 and such.
Okay. And so there were no recommendations at all for any traffic calming along Park Street, the fact that the sidewalk switches from one side to the other? I brought this up before, and I still have yet to see any analysis of whether that road is going to be safe for pedestrians.
So there's an existing sidewalk on Park Street.
There is.
There's an existing crosswalk on Park Street.
Where is that?
It's across from Stagecoach Circle. I think it's just north of their driveway.
Okay, because there's a sidewalk on one side of Park Street.
Yep.
That crosses to the other side of Park Street at approximately 11 Park Street. There's no striping or crosswalk there.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of the whole pedestrian connectivity and
I'm just frustrated because I've been bringing this up.
I share your
It's the very
concern.
first meeting.
Yeah, I think that's more of a comment that if that's an existing crosswalk or sidewalk that could be addressed with the DPW in the town, I don't see this project adversely impacting that crosswalk or some.
No crosswalk.
I guess it doesn't adversely impact that.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Right, but there is a crosswalk there.
No, that's not you have to go closer to Milk Street.
I'm telling you, there is a crosswalk. I'm saying there is a crosswalk somewhere. You're looking for a crosswalk that's closer to Milk Street, that's a little bit farther afield than,
John, I've driven it. There's no crosswalk where I'm talking about.
I'm not saying there's a crosswalk. Anyway, any other comments, Mark?
No, I'll hold my further comments.
All right, John, any comments?
Yeah, I just said, I mean, maybe it's not the appropriate time, we can talk about it later, but the traffic mitigation, there's two options that was given in the decision. I'm guessing you as the applicant chose to work with Mass DOT rather than doing a traffic analysis or study on.
So, John, if you want to speak on the contribution.
I'm not really sure where we stand on that.
Yeah, I can summarize if you'd like. So GPI's recommendation and evaluation of the Route 9 and Route 9 and Park Street intersection. In existing conditions, a deceleration lane is warranted, regardless of this project being proposed. This project obviously increases volumes, which Mark has indicated. And GPI has recommended to Jenny, and I guess the board as well, to include as a condition a contribution so the town can further evaluate that intersection with Mass DOT and kind of include that into a capital improvement in the future for that intersection. So that's the condition. The other alternative would be they recommended potentially evaluating that intersection 12 months post-occupancy and evaluating the turning movements as well as crash data if there were any, and doing mitigation if there were.
Any other comments or questions from the board? All right, I'm going to open it up to the public, and unless there's any other last-minute comments. All right, any comments or questions from the public? Mr. Webster?
Hi, Wayne Webster, 3 Essex Way, and also representing the villages at Walker Meadow at 6 Westonville Village Way. I want to always say that Mr. Malafronte always does a good job with a very difficult subject. In my career, I was a scientist, and one of the problems we have in science is that you have to put things in boxes so you can understand them, and this is sort of the same thing. You can't understand the incomplete impact here, and you just can't overlay Route 9, Park Street, Milk Street, and all of this. But let's just go through some numbers and see if we can sort of think about what's happening. GPI said there'd be 88 cars per hour in the high times going from Route 9 onto Park Street. That's 1.5 cars a minute. And they're heading down Park Street about 160 feet, about 6.7 cars. And so I can't even imagine how many are backing up onto Route 9, and I think I would just be guessing. There are cars entering the site, cars leaving the site. There are cars coming up from Milk Street. Park Street is 0.3 of a mile. It's 1,584 feet. If you use their numbers, which I think are generous, is 20 feet each, which you would probably see in a parking lot, not while you're traveling, but let's use that. Then you would have 79 cars lined up from end to end. And so if we have 88 cars coming in, and I'll assume that GPI didn't mention how many were coming from Park Street, from Milk Street, but let's assume that that's the rest, so about another 20 coming up from Milk Street. Park Street is effectively gridlocked at that time. Those of us who live bordering Park Street, Westborough Village Way, Treetop Lane, Stagecoach, we concentrate most of the houses on Park Street. Those streets that we call streets are basically driveways onto Park Street. There's about 180 houses. I think we calculate 186 houses. So about 260 cars would be attributed to those houses also entering. Milk Street at any time during the high hours, either morning or afternoon, is very busy. We have lots of trucks, lots of cars. And where Park Street meets Milk Street, it goes like this. It's blind going north. You can't see the cars coming to you.
Mr. Webster has 2 minutes, if you can wrap up your comments.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. My point being that with this particular design, if you allow the special permit for the drive-through, coffee shop is perfectly fine. Park Street will basically become gridlocked during those times 5 days a week. It will be very difficult to us to work to basically get onto Park Street and anybody else to move onto Park Street. Thank you very much.
Could I add something? I misspoke in response to Mark's comment earlier.
Can you speak into the microphone? It's a little hard to hear.
To Mark's comment earlier, the existing traffic, I was looking at the wrong figure, I apologize. The existing traffic volume, so right and left turns on to Park Street from Milk Street, is 71. The 2031 no build is 88, and then the 2031 build is 110. I said 12 earlier by mistake.
Yes, sir.
Ron Malconian.
Wait till you get to the microphone, please.
Ron Malconian, 5 Shaker Way. I just want to ask, is anybody planning on putting in stoplights around the bike path going across or at Park and Milk Street? Because down in where I used to live in Arlington, Belmont, right on the Arlington border, they have the Minuteman bike path. And what happened there was, on weekends, people on the bikes and walkers wouldn't let the cars go down the street. So they had to finally put, and the cars would get frustrated and try to cut the people off. And so they finally put a traffic light in to stop the cars and stop the people from crossing Lake Street. Now, I don't know if they did that in other towns, but then coming here tonight, 6 o'clock, just turning onto Milk Street, I had to wait about 3 minutes for the traffic to abate, because I couldn't go, and then the snow was piled up, so I had to creep out onto Milk Street just to see around the corner, because that's a blind corner coming around from the center of town onto Milk Street. So I just want to know if anybody's thinking of down the road, they're going to have to put in traffic lights. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the traffic light situation at Milk Street is something that DPW would have to address. I don't know if there's any traffic light proposed for the B-Walt.
Currently, no traffic light is proposed in that section, but we are only at the preliminary design, and so we're still doing the evaluations and working with MassDOT.
Yes, ma'am.
Want to arm wrestle? Good evening. My name is Dan Politica. I live at 9 Shaker Way in Walker Meadow. At 7:45 this morning, I was on Park Street, and in front of me, I was stopped because there was a school bus. The school bus pulled off of Milk Street and was making multiple pickups on Park Street on its way in the direction of Route 9. When it got to the end of the line there, it did a turnaround in the driveway of the proposed property here. Proceeded back toward Milk Street, again made multiple stops. I haven't heard this addressed, and we all know if we've ever driven around during rush hour, school buses are large, they are slow, and they create traffic backups. Again, I would enjoy hearing some comments on this. Second point, on your analysis of queue analysis, the only other facility I'm familiar with is the number 6, which is located right in Westborough as well. It does not require, as part of his business plan, for people to have to drive through a residential street to get to that facility to do business. This boggles my mind that we are being challenged to have to deal with this as people who have lived in this community for as many years, 22 for me, at this point. Give this a lot of thought, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ken Kelly, 10 Hancock Way. As many of you know, I've been working on forming a local nonprofit organization, Friends of Westborough B-Walt. My comments this evening relate to safe pedestrian and cyclist access to the proposed coffee house and across the Park Street intersection of sections 2 and 3 of B-Walt. These two trail sections will connect on Park Street opposite the proposed coffee house. Sections 3, 4, and 5 of the February 20th response from GPI to the Planning Department are all comments about pedestrian access and vehicle safety on the site. But I did not see mention in the February 20th response any information about the additional pedestrian traffic as a result of B-Walt crossing the property. There are crosswalks within the site as well as a crosswalk across Park Street, which may be relocated closer to Route 9, likely directly opposite the start of B-Walt Section 3, for local residents as well as future travelers along B-Walt. When sections 2 and 3 of B-Walt are completed, the frequent bike and pedestrian crossings of Park Street, opposite the coffee house as well as within the parcel, will substantially increase the risk of injury or worse at that location if the coffee house drive-through lane is allowed to be built here. Projected B-Walt trail traffic should be studied further before final consideration of granting the special permit. While the developer has been asked to allow an easement across the property for B-Walt,
is there any change in design to ensure that B-Walt pedestrians and bikers can use or bypass this property safely? Projected B-Walt trail traffic should be studied further before final consideration of granting the special permit. And where that crossing will go, if you see the right-hand blue car up there, just to the right of the orange umbrella, the tail end of that car demarks where that crossing into B-Walt Section 3 should go. And I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Jenny, am I on target there?
No.
No, it's actually further down.
It's a little
yes,
further
right
down.
Yes, where the pointer is about that it's proposed to cross.
Okay, maybe I was looking at an old map. Lastly, if this clearly unsafe high-traffic mix of pedestrians, bikers, and motor vehicles just off high-speed Route 9 results in injury or worse, who is at fault? Is it the town for allowing the special permit, or does it fall on the developer for proceeding to build at this dangerous location? My prediction is that both will be sued. I encourage the applicant to withdraw their request for planning board approval. Failing this, I urge the planning board not to grant approval for what is predictably an imminent congestion and safety disaster at this location. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a comment over here first, and then you, sir.
Hi, my name is Hank Roush, and I'm a resident at number 5 Ashley Way. And I have read a lot of the documentation that's been provided by the peer review, particularly, because that summarized a lot of issues. It raised a couple of issues that I don't think have been adequately addressed. I mean, one is the route. There are 2 intersections that all of the vehicles have to travel through. The Route 9 Park Street intersection, the Park Street, Mill Street intersection. The Route 9 Milk Street intersection, they're predicting 88 cars an hour coming off of Route 9 going east, going to the coffee shop, going back onto Route 9, I assume going east. That sounds like a reasonable thing to do. If they're also saying that about half of those cars will probably have to go down Milk Street. I'll come back to that in a minute. What that gives us is 44 cars an hour going from Park Street onto Route 9. That gives each car about a minute and 20 or a minute and 30 seconds to get off of Park Street onto Route 9 and accelerate. There's very, very heavy traffic on Route 9 at the 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning. We have not accounted for any of the local traffic. There's lots of people who use Park Street as a cutoff to cut their way from Milk Street onto Route 9 so that they don't have to go around the other intersection. I believe that there needs to be, as part of the traffic analysis, a study of what's happening there, because I'm very concerned there will be a substantial queue that will build up on Park Street, going out, trying to get onto Route 9, and that will start to block up and cause congestion in that area, which is a recipe for problems. Oh, by the way, that congestion will encourage more people coming out of the coffee shop to go down Park Street. So what that says is I've got at least 50 more cars an hour, every hour in the early morning, going down Park Street trying to get out onto Milk Street.
Excuse me.
I frequently go
Mr.
out
Roush.
of Park Street, going out to Milk Street
Your
in the
2
morning.
minutes are up. If you can make your final point, please.
Excuse me, the point is, you're going to have an extreme increase in traffic at Park Street and Milk Street, and I don't believe that intersection has been analyzed to understand that traffic impact and how the town can put requirements to mitigate or manage that traffic impact and make it safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Here in the middle.
My name is Arthur Giordano. I live at 3 Ashley Way in Westborough on Walker Meadow. I apologize if you've already heard many of these comments because the acoustics unfortunately go forward, not backwards, so I couldn't hear many of the comments. But let me just reiterate that Park Street is a neighborhood street, has light traffic, and accommodates local residents. Adding a busy coffee shop to a residential neighborhood street will tremendously increase the traffic on Park Street. Currently, the intersection at Park Street and Route 9 is really dangerous as it is. For a vehicle like myself to go right to go east on Route 9 from Park Street, I have to wait for the traffic light down at the Arcade Speedway Plaza to change. So there's an interrupt in traffic. In other words, with that break in traffic occurs, then I can make a safe exit onto Route 9 heading east. For vehicles traveling east along Route 9, the speed limit is 55 miles an hour. For a safe exit from Route 9, it's best to actually use the Milk Street 135 exit when traveling along Route 9 to allow an easy turn and end up in our neighborhood. So vehicles that want to go right on Park Street from Route 9 must almost slow to a stop, since the entrance is very tight and not designed to be a ramp. Vehicles behind the vehicle planning that right turn are traveling in 55 and must slow down to avoid a collision. So my conclusion is opening the coffee shop on Park Street poses a significant risk with greatly increased traffic and a high possibility of collisions at the Route 9 intersection. Ironically, further down Route 9, as you get towards Lyman Street, there's a nice, easy intersection where the Mandarin and Julio's liquor store is. There's plenty of vacant parking there. There's even a restaurant that's closed, and I just wonder if the site that Starbucks has selected is the right site. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Anand Lele. I live at 7 Lennox Way in Westborough. As a trained civil structural engineer.
Sir, can you just tilt the microphone down a little bit? There you go.
Is it good? Is it good now?
I think that's better.
Great. As a trained civil structural engineer, I have worked on the civil engineering components of many building projects where I had to deal with traffic flows, circulation, and parking. This site, its current configuration, limited size, its close proximity to Route 9, very sharp right turn onto Park Street, is a very narrow and short street, and its dangerous intersection with Milk Street makes this drive-through proposal, in my opinion, impossible to achieve in a way that does not grossly inconvenience the abettors and travelers on Route 9, Park Street, and Milk Street. We all know an ideal location for a drive-through facility such as the one planned here would be a strip mall, a shopping center, or in and out facility of a highway or a main street without impacting an adjacent densely populated residential neighborhood. If we look around, we can find 7 such facilities, 3 Starbucks and 4 Dunkin' Donuts. We also can find 4 such facilities in the engineer study report. They all follow the planning principle outlined above. The town needs to study the improvements needed if they plan to grant such a special permit for a drive-through or coffee shop at this site. It is important to understand the costs of street widening if possible, traffic lights at both ends of the Park Street, if appropriate, before granting any special permit. 1 of 5 vehicles during 2-3 hour periods is big stuff, and its impact needs to be fully understood. An essential deceleration lane on Route 9 must be built before the drive-through opens, not later. This is the way critical traffic flow is safety. I also believe that the pedestrian safety issues need further exploration on the lot as well as Park Street. Not much has been done other than to point out to potential areas of problems. We need to know what the full impact is of this drive-through special permit. Fixing problems, if any, after this is in place and operating would be extremely difficult.
Sir.
In conclusion, I'm done. In conclusion, I do believe that it would be inappropriate to grant this special permit until the entire plan is better understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Phyllis Jaffe, 9 Quaker Way. I'd like to bring up something that I've not heard addressed to date. Park Street is a narrow street with limited sidewalk access. With the current volume of traffic, it's generally not a problem. But thinking about the 105 vehicles per hour during peak times and the number of cars entering from Route 9 east, combined with the congestion expected on the lot and the vehicles coming from Milk Street, I want to focus on the work vehicles. I usually think of vehicles as autos, and apparently Sally does too, as they describe the 20-foot length for a vehicle. But what about the contractors, landscapers, movers, Amazon and FedEx trucks? What about them? Are they apt to pull a landscape truck with a long trailer into a congested lot? I really don't think so. I think they'll park on Park Street and walk to the coffee shop. But remember, Park Street is a narrow, and parking on the road makes it very difficult to pass. If you've tried to pass a mail truck, it's very difficult. If they park in the vicinity of the coffee shop, well, all bets are off for those trying to enter and exit the lot also. What will the town do to cause this not to happen? Making Park Street no parking along its length is not a viable option, as the residents who abut the street all have pretty short driveways, barely long enough for 2 cars. A parking ban would be horrible for them, and for the rest of us not using the coffee shop but needing to use Park Street, the congestion during the busy hours will be impossible. People parking on the street will make it even more impossible. We need more study of the impact of this volume of traffic for Park Street and how this will affect the abutters along its 1,500-foot length. Please make certain that no special permit is granted until we know the full impact of this drive-through on the Westborough taxpayers. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'll comment back there, and then you in the front.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Hoffman. I live at 3 Linda Street. Today I come before you as the business owner of the dental practice that's at this location. And my concern is, well, my business is the entire first floor of the building. And I'm concerned about the layout of the drive-through, about how the 2 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes with the drive-through, merge into one just before the entrance into my office building. I own a dental practice, and I see lots of patients that require van access to the doorway. I get deliveries, FedEx, UPS comes, and if they come and they park right in front of the entrance, they're going to be blocking the exit of the 2 lanes of the drive-through. I mean, my concern as the business owner is how that's going to affect my business. And also, in addition, the entrance in and out of the parking lot has been reduced to 1 lane in, 1 lane out. So I was just wondering if there's been any consideration or traffic analysis of the current businesses at this location and how that might affect those businesses. Thank you.
You want to respond?
Yeah, if you
So to answer your question, in short, yes, there's been a lot of analysis, revisions, review. Like I said, this plan came first before the board in October. We had a pre-application meeting in September of 2024. We took into consideration, as you can see, and John can support this as well. So the existing handicap spaces for the existing office building, there's 2 out front here, and then there's 1 in the rear that services the lower level, which isn't relevant to your practice. But in existing conditions, if someone were to park and use a wheelchair to access the building, they would actually have to go into the drive aisle in existing conditions. There's no sidewalk proposed, or there's no sidewalk in existing conditions at the office building. As part of the application, and this was actually a comment from Hazel, I believe, in the initial meeting, she recommended that we add a sidewalk and crosswalks providing connectivity to the existing office building and the parking lot, which doesn't exist in existing conditions. And then to answer your question regarding deliveries, there's ample spots, both in existing and proposed conditions. I don't believe the board would support a delivery vehicle parking in a drive aisle regardless. I don't think that's in conformance with the zoning bylaws, but there's ample spaces for them to tandem park a parking spot or utilize the bypass lane or the striping near the dumpster to utilize that for deliveries. I think it would just have to be coordinated with your regular FedEx or UPS driver. I'm sure in existing conditions, there's not a whole lot of volume visiting the site, so I'm sure they do just park right out in front of your door. But I think that's something that could be addressed with that delivery driver.
Can I have a discussion?
You can ask questions through the board, but I'd avoid a back and forth between you and the consultant.
Okay, thank you. To coordinate a delivery with a package delivery company is a little bit difficult in terms of, I mean, they just show up when they're on their route. I can't have a discussion with FedEx about what time they're going to deliver packages for me or my office. If there's a large delivery, I wouldn't expect them to park in the designated parking spots that are for me, way at the end of the parking lot, and expect them to deliver all the packages to the front door with no sidewalks and through the proposed traffic arrangement. It's just going to make that difficult for them and for me. So I guess my question is there some way to facilitate that? Maybe you can ask if there is some recommendation for me to get in touch, how to get in touch with delivery package companies to coordinate a time to deliver packages. I don't know how to do that. That's what he's proposing, right? To coordinate package deliveries with the package delivery companies?
I think either that or potentially having a designated spot. I'm not sure if you can do that with FedEx or UPS. I really don't know. I mean, you could designate a spot on the site, and it could be a new delivery driver Monday morning, and he could park wherever he wants. That's kind of a difficult thing for me to facilitate that.
Well, it's difficult for me also.
Yeah, I totally understand.
And part two is, patients that have disabilities and require easy access to and from the front of the building, how parking in the handicap spot, and using a narrow sidewalk is going to be adequate for them.
Yeah, I think the sidewalk and crosswalks conversation, I truly think that this project is a betterment of that. In existing conditions, there's no crosswalks, no sidewalk, there's no pavement markings on the property. I do understand it.
Existing conditions that they can drive right up to the front of the building.
I'd like to interject quickly.
Sure.
The problem with the premise that you're using is that we have, 130 parking spaces for 10 cars.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely correct that currently you can do anything you want. There's a ton of space there. What we have here is very similar to almost any office building. Drive around town, look at other office buildings, and it's a small single office that any delivery can pull into any of the parking spaces and walk in your front door. To my knowledge, you're not receiving massive, it's not like you need ramp truck or lift gate or that kind of thing. So, for the current use, it seems more than adequate. So I think what you're used to, this is definitely different. But to what you'd find at almost any other office building, I think it would be the same or better.
The crosswalk to the front of the building is after the drive-through empties. So my concern is also the traffic flow out of the double lane of drive-through right in front of the entrance to the building.
Yeah, and that was.
and how that's, if that's a safety concern or not.
That was discussed and reviewed by GPI as well. I believe they commented on it. But that was discussed at the first planning board meeting, and the Hazel mentioned, I don't think we had that stop pavement marking. We did have a stop sign proposed, but we included the pavement marking as well. So there's a stop sign, a stop bar, as well as the pavement marking that says stop on the ground. We can't dictate kind of stupidity. If people blow a stop sign, that I can't. I mean, we're doing everything we can to facilitate safe vehicular movements.
And again, I'll just say that this is actually, having it narrowed with a stop sign is ultimately much safer than the current condition. I'll reiterate what I said in the first meeting. We have effectively an anemic use for the amount of parking that is there. This was built as a restaurant, as was the other building on the other side. Most of the people sitting behind me probably bought their homes when there were 2 restaurants there that they're forgetting. And what you're talking about is the existing condition of 10 cars in a massive parking lot. So you don't see the cars. That's a 2-way road driving in front of the building right now as we sit here today. We're turning it into a single, and we're putting a stop sign, a stop bar, and a crosswalk. The crosswalk doesn't stop cars from coming through, but it tells people where they should cross. So it just doesn't make any sense. And the reality is driving traffic to this site, in my opinion, will only improve the business operations in the office building.
Thank you.
Just one final comment.
Yep,
and I'll sit
last
down,
thoughts.
I promise. To be clear, for the record, I'm not against the proposed coffee shop as a restaurant standalone at all. It's the layout of the drive-through that empties out into the front of my building. That's my concern. Thank you.
Understood, thank you. Yes.
My name is Bill Mills. Pardon me. I live at 15 Sheffield Way in Walker Meadows. This picture is wrong, at least for the current conditions. Park Street has 2 90-degree corners. There's no rounding whatsoever. I've been working at my daughter's house for the last 3 months, at least 3 or 4 days a week, going at rush hour in Framingham. That is a 90-degree corner. You need a big space to take a pickup truck and turn right, because it's long. You need both lanes to be clear to make that turn at 90 degrees. Are you going to modify the end of Park Street to make it like that, or is that in your plans?
This is a photograph.
That is not a photograph. Go out there and look at it. Go out there and look at it. It is a 90-degree corner in and out. There's no rounding whatsoever. So this is false information. Let me go on to another point. I went up this morning, because I didn't work at my daughter's house, and sat there for a half hour and looked for openings that you can turn into. Because I'm often queued up behind 1 or 2 other cars, and sometimes it takes me 2 minutes to take a right turn. You put 100 plus more cars in there, and people will be queued up for 4 or 5 minutes at the back end of that line all the time. Because that picture is not what reality is. It is a 90-degree corner. Anyone go up there and look at it once the snow melts, and you'll see it's a 90-degree corner. If I'm coming down Route 9 and want to turn right, I got to slow down to 15 miles per hour in a small pickup truck to make that turn. I can't make it in a big pickup truck at 15 miles an hour. And the speed limit there is 55. It is really going to make a major headache to people coming out of Park Street, current residents, and the people that are using the Starbucks. And going down to Milk Street is even a worse issue, because that puts even more cars on 9, eliminating more open spaces for cars to pull into. This is going to be an absolute traffic headache for everyone involved, and I encourage you to deny this special application.
Thank you.
May I ask you one more question?
So we usually like to take comments from everybody and then second comments after that.
I would just like to say that is a photograph, as is on Google imagery. Everybody in the room can pull it up. This is not some game. That's the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
I'm Nancy Castelli. I live at Walker Meadow, and I take my dog out for a walk, 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30. There's kids waiting to get on a bus, and kids have to cross the street from that apartment complex on Park Street to get to the bus stop. And there's 2 bus stops on that road that this kind of traffic would just be problematic and not a good neighborhood impact.
Thank you. Yes, over here.
Just want to make one comment. Wait, I just want to talk something. Now it's somebody else. Oh, somebody else, okay. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Lois Tepner. I'm at 4 Westonville Village Way in Walker Meadow. When you consider the number of vehicle trips on Park Street over 2 to 3 hour periods on any weekday, it's approximately 105 vehicles in an hour. That's a pretty daunting thought for our little Park Street. The estimate is, I guess, 88 cars coming through Route 9, another 20 coming up from Milk Street. So I live in Walker Meadow, and we take advantage of the beautiful EMTs, fire departments, ambulances that serve our community. They are there at any time of the day. It could be at midnight, or it could be at 8 o'clock in the morning. It could be at 9 o'clock. It could be when the school buses are coming through. I guess if we add more cars to the whole mix, it's going to challenge them, and that in itself might amount to some sort of an accident. And even though they might put their sirens on, there's no place for cars to pull off. It's just a narrow place. It's a curved road. You come up from 135 South, and you're on this, and all of a sudden there's a little curve before you get to Walker Meadow. People that are coming from Route 9 going back down that way probably may miss that one. But I guess most of all, I don't have little children anymore, but we do live within a beautiful residential neighborhood. And I'm concerned about my neighborhood families with kids. Very often I go out of the condo development and I turn left, and I'm going to try to get down to 9 West. And there's the school bus, and I see the kids from Treetop, and I see neighborhood kids, and some come over from the other brick complex off of 135. But they're coming and going. School buses are coming and going in there several times during the day. So it's not very hard for me to get myself down to that corner where I have to turn, and then I go up, and then I make the U-turn, I'm going west.
Excuse me, ma'am.
So going...
Your 2 minutes are up. If you could make your final comments, please.
I'm sorry?
Your 2 minutes are up. If you could make your final comments, please.
I'm concerned about the residents, and then I guess the other thing that I'm concerned about is when you come back down, when I come back down on Route 9 to come to my place, I can go on the 135 cutoff, or I can go to Park Street. If I choose to go to Park Street, it's like I'm taking my life in my hands. There's 3 lanes become 2, and I hit the brakes, I do everything else, and there's still people who want to ram into me. That's a very dangerous intersection. And I guess I hope that you will realize that there's going to be an awful lot more accidents, and for sure, the people who live on that street aren't going to send their kids out to the front yard to play.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a hand back in the back, and then up here. If you have a comment or question, please raise your hand high. I'm a little short. I don't see above everyone's heads.
Mark Rigoli, I'm from the great nation of Treetop Park. 2 quick points. I noticed on one of the slides they referenced that there are numerous businesses on Route 9, which connects Route 9 onto the businesses. The vast majority are on 3-lane stretches from the Shrewsbury-Northborough line up to the bakery, and then from the bakery along here to roughly Bertucci's is 2 lanes, but every place else is 3 lanes. So when people want to exit, it's much safer and the 2 lanes of traffic can continue along. Not the same situation as here. And speaking of this intersection, I polled my neighbors. No one in my complex exits to go home here. They go off on Milk Street and go the longer way down to Park Street because it's too darn dangerous to get off here, quite frankly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Up front.
So I'm Ed Burdick, 11 Essex Way. We've had a lot of discussion about pedestrian safety, and I don't think it's been resolved. I think Soli has done a really, really big effort to make this big thing fit on this little lot. But I don't think we're there yet. So what I imagine in trying to walk across that thing, if I wanted to go like to the dentist's office or something like that, and actually a lot of people walk to the dentist's office, that seems like a really circuitous route. I'm not sure how I would negotiate that unless I just walked around the edges where the cars are going the same direction as me. It sort of feels to me like I'm in a big city crossing the traffic. Have all of you driven on Park Street? Park Street is just above a dirt road. There's no parking on either side. There's no space for it. If anyone stops on Park Street, then the car can't go around it unless they go into the other lane, and if there's traffic coming the other way, which there usually isn't now, but I think there would be in this situation. That's hard for cars. For pedestrians trying to get through here with sidewalk on one side, then a crosswalk, and then a sidewalk on the other side, no traffic controls, that's really scary to me. And you can't see that by looking at this top-down view. It's very difficult to see that. I was an engineer for many years trying to fit circuits in a specific spot, and that was a big enough challenge. If those things were moving around, and I know there's a huge parking lot there right now. I walk there all the time. And it would be nice if there was more business in there, but this seems awful crammed in.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes is up. If you could just make your final comment.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Andrea Burdick, Essex Way. I just want to make one point, which is there's 2 things we're looking at. One is the way it is now, and the other is what it would be like with a restaurant. Now, if there was a restaurant there that was not going to have a drive-through, there was one there before that was no problem. The problem is the drive-through, and the problem is how the place is accessed. It's not accessed from Route 9 like it is in Framingham or like it is further down in Westborough. It's accessed through the very narrow residential street that is short and open on both ends. And we're concerned that we can't even get out of our driveway. In other words, this is a very popular place. I have no doubt that the business owner would make a tremendous profit. The problem is that it is so popular, it's going to change things so that after it's already built, how are we going to fix what's going to happen? Because, I mean, just common sense tells you the people in that office building right on the corner across the street, they're going to walk over to get coffee, and people are going to be walking. Now I'm going to talk for 1 minute about what's going on now. Amazon trucks and other delivery cars stop right in the middle of the street. The police stop traffic if something's going on the street and they don't want people to go through. That keeps us from going through. It's already a problem before any of this came up. It's a pre-existing condition of a very, very narrow lane in a modern city, and I'm sure that when Park Street was built, it was a cow path or something, but all I know is it's already at least 100 years outdated for the roads compared to the traffic, and I think we should look long and hard about how much will it cost the city, because I've seen fire trucks coming through, I've seen road workers coming through, I've seen delivery coming through, and that's not even counting businesses, that's just counting the residential area, and every single time there's a long backup. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris Wagner, Park Street, 11. My comments kind of echo what other people already said today. I heard two comments that feel a little disingenuous to me from the sponsors of this. One is this is just not another Route 9 business, because the ingress and degress are not on Route 9. They're on a residential street. And it's pretty significant, the amount of cars you're proposing to increase this, even best case with a 1.5 minute throughput. That I've been to plenty of Starbucks where it took like 5-10 minutes to get through the line. So I find that number a little bit disingenuous. And the second thing is that this is not just another restaurant. You know, whether this has a, another restaurant that opened at lunchtime or dinner, we're only talking about having an increased traffic pattern from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until when the restaurant closes at 8 or 9. This proposal is from 5 a.m. until like 10 p.m. That has a huge impact on the residents of Park Street and offshoots of that, who have to suffer this increased traffic pattern for like 16 hours a day. So that seems like not at all like a normal restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could say a comment on that?
Sure.
So although the application, we kept the operating hours, I think 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. as you indicated, most of the Starbucks in this area operate, I believe, between 5 and 8 p.m. And then the volumes of traffic that you're referencing, that's during the peak hour. That's how we analyze the traffic volumes. So it's the peak hour, the AM peak hour. Typically the Saturday midday is actually the peak hour for the week. Which typically is between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. But it's not this isn't a consistent volume at the rates we've analyzed, if that makes sense. Traffic analysis is not, it's kind of a difficult thing, and there's various aspects that contribute to the traffic analysis. But I just wanted to make that clear that it's not, we're not expecting 105 vehicles entering the site 16 hours a day. And if that was misrepresented, I apologize. I don't believe it is in the traffic report. It's very clear that that's just the peak hour.
Do you happen to have the daily trips?
Daily trips?
Total daily trips, not just peak hour, but total daily trips anticipated?
I don't believe so. I have that number offhand.
All right. Any other comments from the public? All right, sir.
Ram Alconian, 5 Shaker Way again. I'm bringing up from experience. I talked about Lake Street and stuff, and I submitted a letter to the board about how when we decided to move here, the town had moved the tennis court to the front of our house. There were other tennis courts there, and they moved the varsity and the high school tennis teams there. And what became a parking nightmare on Saturday and Sunday mornings when they had soccer, and now became a parking nightmare Monday through Friday at right after school. And before it was a parking nightmare every day, there was an incident on the field where a little girl had a heart attack. And the fire station, which was not far from the fire station to Park Street, maybe even closer, couldn't get down the street because the cars were parked and blocking it. And they've since redesigned the street and everything to remedy that. And they had to get out of the EMTs had to get out, and they had to run to the park because they couldn't get the ambulance down the street. And as we all well know, the ambulance visits Walker Meadow quite a bit. The last thing I want to say is they're saying 100 cars a minute, 100 cars for the rush hour. Well, Starbucks itself says 4 minutes is average. To me, that's 5.5 hours. I don't know where they're getting, 8 cars in a queue times 4 minutes. That's 32 minutes to process 8 cars. I don't know how these numbers are adding up. Thank you.
If I could respond, I actually wanted to bring this up regarding Mr. Webster's comment letter too. So the one thing that your guys' calculations are misrepresenting is you're starting the second.
Sam, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry, you're starting, Mr. Webster submitted, I think you basically said the lowest observed service time we observed was 58 seconds, which was, I believe, in Canton on Mansfield Ave. The calculation you did was 60 vehicles per hour is what you calculated. We're representing 104. What your calculation's missing is, so the second car can start their service time as soon as the first car leaves the order point. You were saying it takes the whole minute for the second car to start. So the queue backs up. So the first person orders, as you guys have all been to a drive-thru, I assume. Someone orders, you pull up, the second vehicle orders immediately. That they start a queue. So it's not a 60 seconds, then the second one starts, 60 seconds, then the third one starts. It's a continuous calculation and queuing. That's where the numbers came from. Right. I did read that in your memo.
Any other comments from the public? Sorry, I think the person in the back was first, Wayne.
Yes, of course.
Excuse me, Wayne, he raised his hand
Sorry,
first.
Yeah, my name is Greg Michelle. I live at 8 Quaker Way in Walker Meadow. I've listened to all the various comments and largely agree with everything, so I don't want to prolong the agony here. But I understand that the GPI recommendation suggested that a possible way of dealing with the dangerous intersection there between Route 9 and Park Street would be to build a full-width deceleration lane. And I think that could be a way of easing the problem, because it is very dangerous to make that turn today without all the extra traffic that we're talking about here. I've had the interesting experience of coming out of Park Street, turning onto Route 9, and I had a car pass between me and basically on the breakdown lane. He went past me with a good 30 mile an hour plus on me. And I had watched what was happening, but where he came from and how he got there, I don't know. So I think, as somebody pointed out, it's a lot of the businesses on Route 9, further west and further east, are served by a 3-lane road. And that when this bottleneck happens, you've got vehicles coming over the bridge, over the hill, and they're accelerating along there on a 2-lane road. And this entrance into Park Street is extremely narrow, and it is pretty much a 90-degree turn. I don't know where that photograph came from, but it's a very tight turn to make, and it's a very narrow entrance. So the only possibility, as I say, I understand GPI mentioned building a deceleration lane on Route 9, which would bring it then to a 3-lane at that particular point and give people a chance to get out of the traffic flow and slow down to make the tight turn. I don't know how that can be achieved because it's a state highway, and I'm not sure they'd want to spend the money. And I don't think the town would want to spend the money building such a facility, but it's a possible solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just 2 short points. Any numbers we used were your numbers. I don't know how to do the integration and the cars moving about. I certainly don't think they go from 4 minutes down to 34 seconds. Again, your numbers. That's really up to you, and I think is indicative of why we need more study of this to really understand this and the impact of those cars moving up and down Park Street. The other thing that was said here when Dr. Hoffman, the dentist, was here, was that you can do your best you can, but you can't design for stupid. I can tell you in 40 years I managed medical device companies, and we designed equipment, and you do design for stupid. And that's what engineers do. You look at the problem and you say, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You design that. You just don't discount it. Thank you.
Could I make another comment?
Yes, through the board.
I just want to point out a couple of things. Number one, and as I mentioned before, we have actually made this a safer intersection, physically safer. There's no longer cars exiting, 20, 30 feet from Route 9 that will get hit as somebody's coming off of Route 9, and then we've eliminated the second entrance, and we've pushed the third entrance further down, making the site physically safer. All I've heard tonight is people talking about volume. And I understand if you took an NHL season of 82 games or whatever it is, and you said we're going to play 160, and then you count up how many people get injured throughout the year, and it goes up. Did it make a game of hockey more dangerous? Likely not. It's more. So if we have more accidents here because there's more people on the street or whatever, I understand that could happen. But if this intersection is so dangerous that nobody that lives on this street is comfortable driving in or out of that intersection, or if a child is going to get hit on the street playing in the front yard, it only takes one. It doesn't matter if there's 100 cars that drive down that street in an hour and a child gets hit, that child can get hit tomorrow. And if this intersection is so dangerous, where have these people been for the 20 years that they've lived there and say, this is absurd? How can they let their daughter, their mother, their wife come visit or come home through this intersection? If it's dangerous, it's dangerous. It has nothing to do with this proposal, other than that we're making it safer, significantly.
Thank you. All right, any other comments from the public?
One small comment.
Sorry?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, board member has a question. We're going to go in first.
Sorry, guys. And maybe anecdotally you can help me with this, but I forgot to ask this question earlier, and I was a little distracted by some of your other answers. But can you tell me, did the study address whether solar glare on Route 9 eastbound in the mornings is an issue? And perhaps somebody here can tell me whether the angle of the sun in the, I don't drive that way in the mornings, but I know sometimes eastbound solar glare can be a significant issue.
I can't hear you.
I can actually.
Solar glare for what, though?
Solar glare on Route 9 eastbound.
No,
I can actually answer that because
Wait a second.
Okay.
I'll rephrase the question. I'm concerned that solar glare on Route 9 eastbound in the mornings, when you are going towards Park Street, is that an issue? When, and I don't know if you travel that way in the mornings. I don't travel that way in the mornings. So I'm just trying to figure out, I know there's sections of eastbound Route 9 where solar glare is a significant issue in the mornings, and I just want to know if that was addressed in the traffic study.
So in a typical traffic study, and in this traffic study, it was not addressed or evaluated. It wasn't brought up. We have reached out to Mass DOT District 3. We have on the applicant's behalf, and Jenny has on the town's behalf as well. They haven't identified this intersection being problematic or any issues with solar glare. This is the first I'm hearing of it. I know it is an eastbound movement, so I'm just sure certain times of the year the sun probably does align as it rises with Route 9, but I can't say for certain.
So, Mark, is your concern with the cars turning onto Park Street or turning off of Park Street onto Route 9?
Either one.
I can answer it because I've done both. Oh, I've done both, and I can answer that
Okay,
question.
and what's your name and address, please?
Phyllis Jaffe from Quaker Way in West Meadow, and I commuted into Boston for 15 years, and solar glare is an issue both turning and going east in the morning, and even now, there's tremendous solar glare at certain times of the year. It's not every day, but I have tried when I've come out of Park Street and I am looking to get onto Route 9 going east, and I look west, that's an east-west street. And there are times when I cannot see what is coming from the west because of solar glare. So the answer, Mark, is yes, solar glare is an issue at certain times of the year. And it's certain, of course, for a certain period of the day.
Yeah.
But it's significant, particularly the west-facing.
Ma'am, thank you.
Looking west.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any follow-up to that, Mark?
No, I just not sure why that isn't part of a traffic study, so I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to, I mean, we've had, in addition to the engineers, professional traffic operations engineers from Solely Engineering, the planning board hired GPI as a third-party consultant, a professional engineer to evaluate that, and that isn't something that typically comes up in a traffic study. It wasn't something that Lisa, the town engineer, has brought up. I understand your concern.
I have to apologize for bringing it up this late in the game, but it's something that occurred to me the other day, and I just wanted to know if it had been addressed or not, and you're telling me it hasn't. Okay.
No. Nor do I think it really impacts the project at hand. I mean, if solar glare in existing conditions is an issue, that should probably be rectified regardless of this project or.
Yeah, I wonder if solar glare was evaluated when any of the other developments on Park Street were developed. I doubt
Or
it.
any developments along Route 9.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you've got all eastbound Route 9. Yeah. All right. Any other comments from the public?
Simple comment.
I'm sorry?
One small comment.
One small comment. Okay, name and address, please.
Name is Anand Lele, 7 Lennox Way, Westborough. Gentleman pointed out that olden times there were 2 restaurants, one here and one across the street. But even now, if you put a restaurant there, we will not be talking about this. That restaurant will not be putting that many cars on Park Street ever.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right. Oh, yes.
David Coughlin, 5 Essex Way. Where's the bike path in all this? I'm kind of confused. The B-Walt, where is that?
It's going to.
I can pull up a slide.
Yeah,
that
if you have the pointer, it's going to pull into the site at that upside-down L-shaped sidewalk crosswalk area, and then go travel up along Park Street.
So you can see everything in red is, excuse me, everything in red is.
So that's getting thrown in the mix, basically. That's going back to Park Street also?
The B-Wall?
Yeah, I don't know.
I believe it's proposed to
Yes.
travel east-west on Route 9 and then take a 90-degree onto Park Street, yeah.
So that's going on Park Street?
No.
Okay.
No, it's going to cross Park Street. That crosswalk, the red crosswalk,
Where does it come from?
it comes from behind CarMax and behind Walker Meadow, between CarMax and Walker Meadow.
It's not proposed to travel down Park Street,
Yeah. Okay.
just to cross Park Street.
All right.
Yes.
If during peak,
Name and address first, please.
sorry, John Hoffman, 3 Linda Street. If during peak traffic times, the traffic that's pulling in for the drive-through is backed up onto or near Park Street, and there's only one entrance in and out of the parking lot, I could, not the double yellow, if it's backed up to the entrance to the parking lot.
We made that
How
double wide.
other cars or patrons to this parking lot are going to get in and out of the parking lot? Someone has a 7:30 appointment at my office and they can't get into the parking lot because it's during peak time, then they miss their appointment and I lose the business.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So as part of this evaluation, we submitted a queue analysis and we visited 7 Starbucks locations in the Commonwealth. I've personally been 5 of the observations I've sat in Starbucks parking lots quite frequently. The maximum queue we've seen in those 14 hours of observations, one of them was at the Starbucks in Westborough, was 11 vehicles. We saw an average queue length of 8 vehicles. This drive-through is in conformance with the town's site plan review regulations for their drive-through. It actually exceeds their queue requirements. The town only requires 12 queue. We have 15 within the drive-through lane itself. So to answer your question, we don't anticipate queue volumes.
Okay, that's just an average. I'm just talking anecdotally.
John, there's a couple other things we put in.
Excuse me, we're not going back and forth.
Well, I want to explain it. He's asking a question.
No,
That's fine.
chair
I'm just raising a concern. That's my concern.
All right, thank
I
you.
mean, I don't think he answered.
If you want to give a short answer. you
I'd
can
just
give a
like to
short
say that we have a bypass, which also alleviates if there ever were backup. But more importantly, we put a double-wide entrance to even create that much more room if there ever was, for some reason, that much backup. It's actually twice as wide as a normal entrance.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So I appreciate that everybody has a passion to speak, and you certainly want to have your say, but tradition is that you wait for the chair to recognize you before. And if you need to respond to something or feel like he hasn't, please ask the chairs for the chair to acknowledge you before you jump in and we turn this into a free-for-all.
Thank you, Mark. Any final comments from the public? All right. Any final comments from the board?
Could I make one final comment?
Sure.
I do want to say that the safety of that intersection, Park Street and Turnpike Road, as well as the safety of Park Street and Milk Street was part of the traffic impact study. It was evaluated by GPI. They had us expand the safety analysis. Over the 3-year period that we evaluated, which is Mass DOT as well as police reports from the town of Westborough, there's only been 2 accidents at the intersection of Turnpike Road and Park Street. This was between 2021, 2020, and 2019. That's the most up-to-date Mass DOT data. And then the Milk Street intersection, I think, it's in the traffic impact study, but it wasn't significant in the way intersections are evaluated, and Mass DOT indicated that to Jenny as well in correspondence, that this intersection, although the concerns are loud and clear, it has not been identified as a problematic intersection or an unsafe intersection based on the crash volume. I just wanted to make that clear, and that was evaluated by GPI as well as Solely. So,
thank you. All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I actually, when we first heard this, my concern was the queuing length, the backup. I appreciate that we now have a 15-car queue. I think that's very helpful moving down. I appreciate all of those changes. My real concern is the deceleration lane. And so I just want to make sure I understand what that process looks like. My understanding is that we would need to put that forth to Mass DOT, right? To say, will they, I know it's been discussed, but then I guess the actual process for that is we would make the request and they would then officially decide yes, no, is that correct? But that, because it's not, we couldn't make that like a requirement though. But is that what the process looks like though? We would need to officially request that?
Correct. So we have been in conversations with MassDOT specifically about this intersection, recognizing that there's an existing issue. And we're going to be meeting with them in the next couple of weeks to discuss it. Part of our discussion will also be for the proposed shared use path, the B-Wall.
Yep.
So potentially when we look at that design, part of that design would be looking at this intersection and the safety of it and evaluating the need for a widening of the shoulder or a deceleration lane. So that will be up to MassDOT, but we have initiated those conversations, but we can't require the applicant to make improvements on a state-owned road.
Okay. I guess one other thought is I wonder, I don't know, is there any sort of signage that we would want to consider across from the entry to just like further encourage people not to go down Park Street? I hear the concern that the road is not wide and being able to access it, but I don't know. And because you can't, it's not like you can't have through traffic anyway, so it's not like you could say like local only. So I don't know if there's anything there, but I don't know, to encourage people to go back onto Route 9 and not down Park Street.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there could be some options of like left turn only out of the driveway at certain hours, but I don't know if that's going to actually solve any problem or create more problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could, so the traffic peer review, so as indicated on the site plan, one of the signage that was recommended by GPI was actually a exit right to Route 9 westbound via Milk Street, and it's directing traffic to take a right out of the intersection.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and that's just the evaluation of kind of the overall network.
Yeah.
When we first submitted our traffic report, we were anticipating queues, so vehicles exiting the site or just traveling northbound on Park Street and then waiting at the Park Street Route 9 intersection. We anticipated them to be, I think, like 180 feet, which would be like 9 vehicles during the peak time. The modifications GPI recommended, it actually reduced the queue length because they anticipate people who frequent this site are actually going to exit right and utilize kind of the Milk Street interchange with Route 9. Especially when there are queues, if there's 4 or 5 vehicles backed up on Park Street, if you're familiar with this area,
Sure.
you're, as many of the residents indicated, that taking a right and heading Milk Street is actually sometimes quicker. So that was their recommendation, and we took that into account.
So they actually encouraging more cars to use Park Street?
Yeah, there's no use restrictions on Park Street, and I think that's what you're kind of indicating.
Yeah.
It's a local road, but there's no volume restrictions that I'm aware of, at least. So a distribution of traffic actually sometimes helps the network as opposed to putting everything to an intersection that some of the residents have indicated is they feel unsafe. Yeah.
Can I speak?
Yes.
I think GPI's comment is that they were concerned about people leaving and then backing up. I don't know if I should use the word backing up, but doing a U-turn at the other Starbucks.
That was their concern, was that they feel as if you eventually wanted to head westbound on Route 9, if you were unaware of that movement going Milk Street, like you weren't familiar with this area, you would go back onto Route 9 and then make a U-turn at the intersection with the Burger King, Starbucks, and Convenient MD. So that signage kind of helps avoid that movement. That was the reasoning for it. Thanks, John.
Understood. Thank you. The comments from the board on that? Sorry? Oh.
Can I just note,
Sorry, come up to the microphone, please. Name and address.
the traffic flow analysis that he cites was during 2020 and 21, which was COVID, and there were less cars on the road then. So it's a biased time frame to choose for calculating flow. That's not realistic.
Yeah, so the Mass, if I can speak, the Mass DOT crash data is a couple years, lags a couple years. GPI, the planning board's peer reviewing consultant, agreed with our analysis on how we evaluated the safety. There's only so many metrics you can use from a crash data standpoint. We use the most available and up-to-date. This is consistent with how engineers across the Commonwealth prepare traffic impact studies. It's standard engineering practice to utilize that data.
Thank you. Yes.
Phyllis Jaffe, Quaker Way. I just want to reiterate what the gentleman from Treetop said and add that a large number of people who live at Walker Meadow, as he indicated Treetop, do not come to Route 9 and Park Street. When we're coming from the west, going east, a good number of us, I can't give you exact numbers, but I know many of the people that I speak with get off at 135. And we go down 135 and come up Milk Street because of that intersection. And the gentleman from Treetop indicated that the people there do the same thing. So the fact that, quote, there haven't been very many accidents at the end of Park and Route 9 is because we're not going there. We're going down Route 135.
All right. We're starting to get repetitive with the comments, so I'm going to just move forward. We have two decisions on the table right now. We have a site plan and we have a special permit. The special permit for the drive-through and the site plan for the site overall. How does the board want to go through this? Do we want to, sorry, you look like you're going to have a comment.
Yeah, I think we can think realistically. Well, a couple of things. I don't know how this site was chosen. I do think the Target parking lot would be better, or the Lyman parking lot would be better, but we're not talking about those. But I think realistically, if we want to encourage another business on Route, like this business on Route 9, if we don't, they're not going to open, Starbucks is not going to open a location on Route 9 without a drive-through.
Right.
So I think I think that's just something to consider if you want the business there, that's just, I think, a reality of it also. That's my comment.
John, do you have any comments?
No, I agree. I mean, the only thing is with this decision, the GPI offered two solutions for the traffic mitigation. So I think, and or we could probably push for both.
Are you referring to conditions 40 and 41?
Yeah.
All right. Mark, any final comments or any other discussion items?
Yeah, I just don't, I don't think this is the right location for a drive-through, period. I mean, you're encouraging, I know I brought the solar glare up very late in the game. You've got the recommendations for deceleration lane that cannot be addressed, should be addressed by the state anyway. You've got a sidewalk system on Park Street without crosswalks, and we're encouraging more traffic to go down there with a drive-through and to come from Milk Street. You've got another condo project, Treetop Park, with sidewalk systems, and they have to cross Park Street as well with no crosswalk. The number of trips generated on Park Street doesn't pass the smell test for me, because I think everybody coming from the Rotary is going to say, I'm going to get my coffee at Starbucks and I'm going to go up Park Street. They're not, people who are currently going to the Lyman Street Starbucks are going to say, no, that's on the wrong side of the street. And then my last point is, as much as I understand that traffic engineers do their best with this stuff, we had another project, another Starbucks, right? That was a complete mess when it opened. And the peer reviewer signed off on that design and said, yeah, this will all work. And we approved it, and we actually had to physically go out there, and I was the one who made the recommendation that all the traffic go counterclockwise around the building, and they reconfigured the site, and while that did improve it, right, it was a mess. And that was after a traffic engineering study and a peer review study. So I'm just looking at common sense here. People coming off Park Street having just gone 70 miles an hour on Route 9 East, decelerating, they just lost a lane. I've seen people, literally, I've been driving in the center lane there, and people go by me on the right at 70 and try and get one car ahead. So all of a sudden, you get to Park Street, now you've got to slam on the brakes because somebody wants to take the right and get their coffee. A regular restaurant would be intermittent trips. It would be regional traffic, not using local Park Street streets as much. And I just don't think it's the right, I'm going to vote against this.
All right. So, as I said, we have 2 permits on the table. Special permit, which requires a 2/3 majority, so 4 of the 5 board members, and a site plan that requires a simple majority, 3 of the 5. Do we want to go through the decision criteria for each? What would be the best way to go through this in all of your opinions?
Just real quick, so so you're saying 4 out of 5 have to vote to approve the special permit?
Correct.
Could we wait for Hazel?
Yeah, do we need to wait
Given
for Hazel?
I don't know. I know this has been like put off, but just because, I don't know, it's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to the applicant if you want to continue. I mean, we can continue if we want to wait for Hazel, or we can
So
take
what
an
I'm-
action now.
What I'm asking is then, do the 4 of us need, to approve the special permit, do the 4 of us need to vote for it?
Yes, it would have to be unanimous.
And
With the-
I'd say
with the members
then
present.
we need to push it off until Hazel's here.
That's up to you.
Yeah, I think the next planning board meeting is next Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
It's March 4th? Yeah, we can request a continuance till March 4th. That's amendable to the board.
Yep. So continue the hearing for the special permit and the site plan to March 4th. Is that what you'd be looking to do? All right. I'd like to entertain a motion.
Move to, what is it? What's the date?
Continue to March 4th.
Continue this to March 4th, please.
Second.
All in favor? All right. It's 3 out of 4. All right, so this is going to get continued until next Tuesday.
For the
Meeting is at-
record, I'm opposed to that continuance.
Okay. Going to get continued to next Tuesday. That's
Thank you.
6:30.
Thank you.
No, but usually you say any opposed, because I could abstain.
Why would you abstain? You should have only abstained if you have a conflict of interest.
Well, you don't know what I'm going to do.
Told us what you were going to do.
Well,
Yeah, you
fair enough.
just said.
But I didn't tell you I was going to vote against the continuance.
We still have some business, so if you guys could please make your way out a little bit quietly so that we can continue our planning board business. We'll give you a minute, but after then, please keep the discussions to a minimum. All right. So we have the hearing for the 2 zoning articles, and Jenny, I have to read these into the record, you're saying?
Yes, you'll need to open the hearing on.
Can I read both at the same time?
I would not recommend opening both at the same time.
Open one, discuss, close.
Right.
Open the second, all right.
Right.
So this is for accessory dwelling units in accordance with the provisions, excuse me, we're still having a meeting. Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Westborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 6:30 PM regarding the proposed zoning amendment entitled Amend Zoning Bylaw, Section 7.1, Accessory Dwelling Units ADU. The articles will appear on the warrant for the March 22nd, 2025 Westborough Annual Town Meeting. One, to see if the town will vote to amend the Westborough zoning bylaws by amending section 7.1 accessory dwelling units to reflect the recent legislative changes as described in chapter 150 of the Acts of 2024 and reflected in chapter 40A of Massachusetts General Laws, MGL. To access the proposal and any submitted documents, please go to our website. Documents are also available for review in the Westborough Planning Board office at 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, during regular business hours. I am opening the public hearing for this article.
Thank you, and I do have presentations. 1 second. Okay. Like I said, I have a presentation for each zoning article. I'll start with the one we just opened for ADUs. Some of this may be repetitive to the board, but I think that it's important to give this information for the public. So as you know, in response to the ongoing housing crisis, the state took action by passing new legislation in August of '24. Specifically, they made changes to amend the Zoning Act to make it easier for homeowners to build ADUs by right in single-family zones so that they no longer need a discretionary permit or a special permit from a zoning board or planning board. The purpose of the law is very important to make sure that we're all aware of. It's to increase housing opportunities. ADUs provide an alternative option for seniors who want to age in place or individuals with medical needs and their caregivers. ADUs also promote compact growth, making better use of existing land, infrastructure, and buildings. It's often a more sustainable and cost-effective choice than building a single-family home. And then the changes to the permitting process also help to lower that cost for a homeowner. ADUs also offer significant benefits for both property owners and occupants. For homeowners, they can provide a low-cost housing option for adult children or relatives, create a long-term solution for seniors to downsize while staying in their community, and offer rental income to help with maintenance and repair costs. And then for occupants, ADUs are a great fit for smaller households because they offer a way for longtime Westborough residents to stay in neighborhoods that they love and are generally more affordable than traditional housing. They also provide a housing option for individuals that may need physical assistance to live closer to family. You might be wondering, if you haven't watched any of my other presentations, this is the first time you're seeing Fonzie on here. And the reason is that I actually went to the AARP website, which has a lot of great information on ADUs. And one of the things that they had on there is that in the sitcom Happy Days, Fonzie rented an above-garage ADU from the Cunninghams. And I thought that was just a really cool reference because even back in the 1950s era, Milwaukee, that was going on. And the reason was for them at that time is that they had a hardware store and they needed help with the extra income because they were concerned about it closing. So they rented out the ADU. So I just thought that was a cool reference. So what we're proposing for Westborough is really just in line with what the legislation requires, except for a couple of details. So we cannot require a special permit. So the ADUs are now by right. In Westborough, we currently allow ADUs by right, but only if they're attached to the main dwelling. And this would expand it to be in line with the legislation, which allows for ADUs by right, either attached or detached. We can also, we can't require more than one parking space for the ADU if it's located outside half a mile of a train station or bus station, and so that requirement is reflected. We also cannot require owner occupancy of the ADU, which our current bylaw does, so that's removed, and we can't impose unreasonable restrictions. We can still impose requirements for Title V, regulations for setbacks and size, as long as it's above 900 square feet, and we can also prohibit short-term rentals. The ADUs also have to maintain a separate entrance, either directly from the outside or through an entry hall. It cannot be any larger than half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is smaller. The legislation actually states 900 square feet, but we kept it in line with the current requirement, which is 1,000 square feet. And then it has to meet the dimensional requirements for setbacks. So in our case, that would be the same as it would be for single-family homes. So the ADUs would have to conform to the requirements for a single-family home. So again, for the permitting requirements, in a typical situation, it just needs approval from the building inspector for the application, and it must meet those requirements. In some cases, as we currently have in the bylaw, the applicant can request a larger ADU or reduce setbacks through a special permit from the ZBA. So that is in line with what we currently require, and we're keeping that in there. And this is just a timeline showing how this has moved along through the legislature and until present. So February 2nd, this section, Mass General Law 40A, Section 3, went into effect. So currently, ADUs are allowed by right, and we cannot restrict them or require a special permit. So that is in effect right now, and this bylaw just gets us up to date and allows us to put in the requirements that we're allowed to make the choice on, such as short-term rentals and setbacks, and adds it in there. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Any comments from the board? Chris?
Nope, no comments.
John? Mark? All right, I'll just say, I think, this is a great idea, and I'm glad we're complying with what the state, or not complying, but changing our zoning to meet the state to make it a little bit simpler. So I think it's a great idea. All right, any comments from the public? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? 4-0. All right. Do we want to take a vote on this at the moment, or do we want to wait for Hazel?
We can do it.
Take a vote? All right.
Yeah.
I'd like to, anyone have a motion to approve?
Yeah,
Or-
sure.
Jenny, what's the motion in the memo?
The motion is in the memo. It's, I think, the
I have it.
last page, maybe.
I move that the planning board recommend passage of the zoning article 24, section 7.1, accessory dwelling units at town meeting.
Second. All in favor? All opposed? That's 4-0. All right. Now I will read the second one. Revisions to sections 5.3, 5.4, and attachment 1 use regulations schedule. In accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Westborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. regarding the proposed zoning amendments entitled Amend Zoning Bylaw, Sections 5.3, 5.4, and attachment 1 use regulations schedule. The articles will appear on the warrant for March 22nd, 2025 Westborough Annual Town Meeting to see if the town will vote to amend the Westborough zoning bylaws to make edits within sections 5.3 and 5.4 and attachment 1 use regulations schedule of the zoning bylaw to reflect modifications to the dimensional and use requirements for the M1 zoning district and other clarifications. To access the proposal and any submitted documents, please go to our website. Documents are also available for review in the Westborough Planning Board office at 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, during regular business hours. And I am going to open this hearing. Jenny, do you have a presentation for us?
I do, yeah. And I'll note that the article number may change. I think the select board is voting tonight on the warrant. And I know that there were a couple of citizen petitions added, so those, it might just change the numbering. But this is for revisions to sections 5.3, 5.4, and then the table of uses. So what this article does, it amends some inconsistencies in those sections. It updates an outdated requirement that requires new municipal projects in the M1 zone to seek town meeting approval for dimensional standards. And it will then require new municipal projects in M1 zoning districts to undergo a site plan review with the planning board or the SPGA, whatever it would fall under. And that includes a butter notice, as you know. It also establishes dimensional standards for this district. Previously, when this district was created back in 1979, dimensional standards were not set, which is very uncommon for a zoning district to not have them. And so that would add that to the zoning. It also revises the table of uses. Currently in M1 zone, we do not allow the sale of Christmas trees, and we do not allow indoor recreation. So this just changes those no's to a yes. For Christmas trees, really, we do allow them at school sites and things like that. So this just makes it in compliance with zoning. So since you all know I love to research town meetings, I went back in time and looked at past town meetings going back to 2014, which is the furthest date I could easily research, and I found all of the projects that had gone through town meeting for the M1 zoning. And I found that in most scenarios, the vote was for 0 setbacks. So the vote was for a 0-foot setback in most cases, except for a couple instances, such as the Lake Chauncey parking lot pavilion, which was 25 feet, and then the PFAS improvements at DPW, for a DPW structure, which was 25 feet. So under the current bylaw, a new municipal project needs to come to town meeting multiple times, one for funding, one to set dimensional controls, and possibly more depending on the project. In addition, the project needs to go to the planning board as a zoning article, which has its legal requirements for abutter notifications. And then after town meeting, if town meeting votes to approve the dimensional controls, it needs to go back to the planning board for site plan review, which requires additional legal notices for abutters. Overall, this costs additional money and time for the town, which we do have to budget for. And then further, if the funding passes, if a zoning article fails for the dimensional controls, then it can't come back for 2 years. And then this doesn't even take into consideration the rezoning of a lot to become part of the M1 zone, which is also something that must go through town meeting for every zoning change, and then requires those public hearings that I referenced. I also want to reiterate that every public hearing requires a butter notification. So we do notify abutters within 300 feet of the parcel. They're given the chance to come to the planning board and make comments and ask questions. It's noticed in the newspaper multiple times. And again, while these are all important, they cost a lot of money, and they do come out of our budget. This process right now in conversations with town council and reviewing Mass General Law, it is not a typical process that should be going through town meeting to set dimensional controls. It is more appropriate to be at the planning board or zoning board level. So that's just in conversations with town council. So the proposed process that we're proposing with these changes is right up on the screen. It of course would not skip the requirement to go to town meeting for funding. It still would need to do that. It also would need to go to town meeting if we wanted to change the zone to M1. It would remove the requirement to go to town meeting to set those dimensional controls, which, as I said, under Mass General Law, is not appropriate for town meeting. The project will still go to the planning board or zoning board for site plan review, so section 3 would still apply. It requires that those abutter notifications to anyone living within a certain distance of the property and a public hearing. And just a reminder, for under the site plan review guidelines, the planning board can request larger setbacks. I'll show you the setbacks that are being proposed as the requirements on the next screen, but I do want to make that point that the planning board can request that a property or a structure be moved further away than required under the site plan guidelines. Again, most land in the M1 district is used for public needs like water treatment facilities, municipal buildings, and schools, all the things we need to have, some with very specific requirements, especially for public safety, and many with specific deadlines. So the new process, again, would not require a proposed M1 project to wait until town meeting, which at that point could even put it out of conformance if it was related to an environmental issue or something like that. So overall, this proposed revised process will make it more efficient, save some time and money for the town, but still allow that very important public involvement. So here you can see the dimensional requirements that are proposed for the zoning district. As you saw on the previous slides, most approvals from town meeting contained a 0-foot setback. So in conversations with our zoning working group and then looking at the data from past town meetings, we felt that the 5-foot setback was reasonable, because it gives some flexibility if maybe there was a drainage easement or something like that. And again, the planning board can still look at a project during site plan review and ask for it to be moved further away if there were concerns with abutters. So it allows that flexibility. And then for the height, we recognized from past town meetings and reviews that could be a concern. So the maximum height is set to 1 story. And if it abuts unless it abuts a non-residential zoning district, then the height and the number of stories shall not exceed what is allowed by the abutting zoning district. So if it abuts a residential zoning district, then the height would be 35 feet and 2 stories. And that is all I have for that presentation.
Great, thank you, Jenny. All right, any comments from the board? Chris?
Not yet. No, not at this time.
Okay.
But
John.
as you ask questions, I might have
All right,
questions.
John?
Nope, I think it's a good article.
Mark?
Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. I'm worried more about, how the town reacts to changing something that we've always done that way. I have a feeling we may get some pushback at town meeting on this. The one question I had, I know the town currently allows the Civic Club to put Christmas tree sales on the Hastings school site. Are we at risk, though, with the Attorney General by allowing Christmas tree sales? Like, should it be, say, allow religious item sales? Or, I mean, I'm just a little worried about that because it's specifically one religion.
I think that sort of change is really up to the planning board. The Attorney General won't get involved in something like that. But it's a good point.
I have no problem with Christmas tree sales on.
Can we just, rename it to like holiday?
Well, you can suggest that. I think it just opens to more interpretation. I think the purpose, I'm really guessing just from my reading of zoning history and all that, was just because when you sell Christmas trees, it tends to be busy and a lot of traffic is generated all at once. So I think that's why it just generated a lot of traffic for the sale of a specific item. But there are other restrictions for other retail items, and I guess
Yeah.
it's a good conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem pushing it through this way. I just worry that we're risking the whole article. And if you think it'll get through Attorney General, then fine, let's go with it this way.
Well, the Attorney General would only strike the parts that would not.
Right, that's a good point, too.
So-
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a great article. I think, the thing that I had the issue with was that water treatment facility at town meeting that ended up being a special permit, made town meeting a special permit granting authority for something that the whole town needs. So I think this is a needed change.
Yeah, one more question, though. Does the table of uses address what uses are allowed in the M1?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, because I'm just wondering if people are going to pick out certain uses that should or shouldn't be allowed in the M1, or, and I just want to make sure we're prepared to address that. I don't want to spend the whole night at town meeting working through every use, but I'm worried that might happen.
I don't know the last time it was changed for the M1 zoning. Our use table has stayed pretty consistent for many years, but it does exist there. And I should scroll up. Hold on. Oh, I only put the section that I was going to reference, and I'm happy to pull up the zoning table that shows the complete, but it is in there, and any other changes would have to be an amendment to the motion. I didn't see anything. When I was reviewing this, I thought it was a good opportunity to update these items. It's something that has kind of been talked about in the past years, so I didn't see anything else that would potentially need to be in municipal use.
Well, just the only reason I say that is because that last article on the water treatment, that really turned into a use.
It did,
It didn't turn into a dimensional.
It wasn't,
thing.
yeah, and I
And
mean,
you made
yeah.
that point at the time, and I'm just worried that, people are going to start questioning all the uses in the M1 and whether, so we just want to be prepared for that. So, and at least have a backup slide that shows all those uses and.
Okay.
I think one of the other things we should probably focus on, I don't exactly know how to do this, is to kind of counter the town, what you're saying, the opposition of, well, this is how we've done it for a while, and this really is the job of the planning board. And there are 5 elected members of the planning board that are elected to do this job, and it is not a town meeting responsibility. And we really need to start delegating these types of responsibilities to the elected officials that are supposed to be doing these types of things. I think it just needs to be hammered home.
The only thing is, I maybe don't want to vote on this one tonight so we can get a good look at those table of uses and see if there's anything that we might want to reconsider changing from yes to no or no to yes, besides the Christmas tree and, what was the other one?
Or recreation.
Indoor recreation.
Indoor recreation. So, I mean, if you think you've gone through that already, then fine, but if you think we need to look at all the uses and maybe discuss those and
Yeah, I
the
mean,
next week, I don't know.
I would just say that any amendments we make would have to be amendment at town meeting because the warrant's closing today. So maybe if I can bring it up now and we can just go through it quickly. I can
Okay.
show you, in the M1 zone, there's no residential use allowed. You cannot have a farm with pigs or animals raised for pelts. I'm not sure if there's anybody in Westborough that still does that, but that's not allowed. A nursery or greenhouse is not allowed. You can have a recreational camp, cemetery, no drive-ins or amusement parks. Outdoor recreation is allowed. Currently, like I said, sale of Christmas trees is not allowed. These institutional uses are mostly protected uses under the Dover Amendment and Mass General Law, so we do allow those. Commercial uses, we are not allowed to have a gas station, animal kennel, and like I said, that indoor recreation is not allowed. All of these commercial uses are not allowed, so no banks, restaurants, hotels, things like that.
Is the Civic restaurant on M1? Is the golf course M1?
It is, yeah.
And so is that just a pre-existing non-conforming use?
I believe it is, yes. So most of these industrial uses are not allowed, actually all of them. And solar is allowed. And then that's the end of it. So most things are not allowed in the M1 zoning district.
Yeah. I didn't see anything I would think would want to change.
No, I think, other than maybe the restaurant, but if that's grandfathered,
Well, that's something to discuss because, yeah, it might not be grandfathered.
well, if somebody demolishes it, then they lose it.
This is abandoned after 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, that's something that we'll definitely have to look at. But right now that is zoned M1.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Chris, did you have any questions that came up?
No, thank you.
Okay. Members of the public, any comments? All right, seeing none.
Sorry, one comment on those, you're sharing those slides at town meeting, right?
Yes.
I don't think there's a slide with the old and the new on one slide.
The old requirements? There are no dimensional requirements right now. It's set at town meeting.
Sorry, can you go to slide 5? And then slide, and then the next one? Sorry, go back one. I just wonder if they should be together.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was trying to fit them together on the
Yeah.
same screen, but with the font size,
Sure.
it was hard and it was very small and then.
Okay,
you
if
know,
it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Okay.
People would shout at me from the audience that they can't see it and,
That might happen anyway.
All right, are we still,
but I agree. I wanted them to be on the same slide.
are you still looking to possibly continue?
No, I'm fine after we went through that.
Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's 4-0. And anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that the planning board recommend passage of the zoning Article 25, Article 25 revisions of sections 5.3, 5.4, and table of uses at town meeting.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? 4-0. All right, moving on to the B-Walt discussion. I think the only thing was Hazel wanted to wait to review the motion that I had proposed. She reviewed it. I don't know, did she respond to everybody or just to me and?
I think just to you.
Yeah, you can't respond to everybody because then it would be,
I figured not.
yeah.
So she said, I agree with your revisions and will be glad to support the motion, but she's not here, so she can't. I did have one additional change, and this was something that John had suggested at the last one to include transparency. So I'll make the motion, and then if you guys want to discuss, we can. So my motion would be to have Jenny send a letter to the select board with this recommendation. The planning board supports the continued effort of the town to establish the Boston-Worcester Airline Trail at B-Walt. Multi-use shared paths are repeatedly shown to provide myriad benefits to communities in the areas of public health, safety, and economic and community development and traffic. As such, the planning board recommends that the select board, town staff, boards, and committees continue the work necessary to achieve the collective goal of completing the B-Walt as recommended in the Westborough Strategic Plan of 2018 and Master Plan of 2021 in an open and transparent manner.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? All right, so it's 4-0. That was not a hearing, so we do not need to close that hearing. All right, administrative items, Director of Planning updates. Jenny, do you have anything?
I guess I'm sorry, I didn't write down my updates, but we did have a wayfinding and branding meeting last night. I didn't attend, but I believe I heard that Mark attended, so that's great. They did propose 3 different concepts for the wayfinding and branding design, and there wasn't as good of a turnout as they wanted at the meeting, so what they're going to do is send it out as a survey to vote on colors and the schematics, but I don't know if Mark wants to add anything more on that, but I think they were...
No, I think there was some disagreement about whether the sign should be all the same color or if you might want to vary colors depending on where you are directing someone. So Ranger red would be the schools and green signs would be for recreational and outdoor, or whether we just wanted it all the same. And then, the fonts were discussed and the shape of the sign was discussed. There wasn't discussion of locations yet. That is, a future discussion. This was just kind of, trying to get a sense of what these signs are going to look like when we do decide on locations. And I actually really liked all 3 designs. One was like the clock tower from Town Hall, some criticism that it looked a little like a lighthouse. There was one that looked, that was just a sleigh, which was...
A horse and sleigh,
Yeah, just a horse and a sleigh, which certainly brings into play the history of the town. And then the most complicated one had a sleigh and a horse, and then 2 buildings and a tree, and it was a little more complicated, and it was nice, but it might have been too much, distracting from the message of the sign. So I don't know what we'll end up with. I think a survey would be good because I don't think we had enough to really have a resounding consensus last night.
How many people were there, roughly?
10.
10? Okay, yeah, that sounds right to me, so.
Yeah, so we're going to send it out for survey just to get more public feedback from that.
But I have to say, all 3 of the designs I liked, and I'm excited for it. I think it'll look nice.
My other update is that I will be presenting those zoning articles to the Advisory Finance Committee on Monday night. So if you're free, feel free to come and watch. And,
What time is that at?
7 p.m.
Where?
At the Memorial Hall room in the municipal, what is the name? Memorial Hall in the Town Hall.
Town Hall.
Town Hall. I was thinking it might have a name like this.
Yeah, no. Soon to be renamed Gingras Town Hall.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then another thing I wanted to remind the board about, I sent an email out, but the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative is coming up in March. And I know some of you have attended past sessions. They have a lot of new sessions this time. So I think it would be really good if, some of you could attend. It's in Worcester at Holy Cross. It is a Saturday. Typically they have a keynote speaker. I believe last year it was the Lieutenant Governor. It's a great opportunity to talk to other board officials, town officials, and staff. So I would encourage you.
And the planning department covers the cost? No,
The calls.
The cost.
Oh, yes, that is true. We do have it built into our budget for any opportunities for training or whatnot. We do have it in our budget to cover the cost.
I went with Kristen and Hazel last year, and it was, I thought it was really informative. One of the sessions, not as much because I really went more to see if I was going to get something new. And it was on the MBTA communities, and I had really done my homework on that. But the other session I thought was really I learned a lot. So and if I needed to, anyway, the point is I think it's worthwhile to go to if you can give up a whole Saturday.
Yeah,
It's hard
that's
for
the
anyone.
thing.
It's tough, but it's a good conference.
It is a good
I've been in the
conference,
past.
and I'll be also presenting a session, which I'm excited about, and it will be about what goes on behind the scenes of planning board applications. So we have a developer and an engineer on the panel also to talk about what we look at when we look at applications coming in. So
Great.
I think,
Saying we have to sign up for that one?
well, yeah, shouldn't you come support your staff? I think that's all I have.
Okay. Any updates from other members from boards that you serve on?
None for me.
All right. We have minutes of January 21st and February 4th. Has everyone read them? Any edits to either? I would like to entertain a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? It's 4-0. All right. And I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? 4-0. Meeting is adjourned at 8:50. Thank you all. Thank you, Westborough TV.
Oh, are you guys going to yell at me?